Hello, welcome to the Levitt Creative channel, and in this video we're going to cover shading basics and adding some texture on this apple and this orange. We're going to go over the orange first, how I blend to get the colors looking nice and natural, and then I add some texture to make it have interest and fun. So we are going to start with a blank canvas in Procreate. It's just the screen size. I'm going to pick my favorite orange palette. It's got lots of oranges and greens. I got it from a photo from Pinterest, and I haven't used this to sell anything, so I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to start with my monoline brush, draw a circle with the orange color, draw a OK circle, and then tap to make it perfect, make it a little bit bigger, and then let go both of them at the same time. Color drop into it, and then I'm going to add a clipping mask on top of that layer. And this is where I'm just going to go ahead and add some color. Oh, I'm actually just kidding. I'm not going to add color yet. So it's important to know where your light source is coming from in terms of shading. So I'm going to draw that this is where our light is coming from. You don't have to do this, just know that you need to have it be consistent. So if you've got your light coming in on a certain area, know that that's where the light's going to come in. That's where the shine or the tint will be the highest, and the shading will be somewhere behind it. So I'm adding color. I speed this up just because, you know, we don't need to watch me scribble all day long. So I add those colors, and then I go to the artistic and Larapuna with the smudge brush up in between, not the brush, in between the brush and the eraser. So I don't have it super strong and I don't have it super big. And it's okay that all these colors will blend together. That's what we want. That's what will give us a natural looking orange. So I just blend around, basically push the colors together so that they look like they blend together. And then I went to the airbrushing section and went to the soft airbrush for smudging, and I blended that in. I like doing the Larapuna artistic brush first just because I feel like it pushes the color around better, and then the airbrush just finishes off the smudge very clean. So next we add the texture. So this is the texture brush I have. I basically just made it with the bleed texture brush from the import, and then one of their grain messy paper ones, and I make sure that it looks like it's black. You can tap with 2 fingers to switch it. And that's my texture brush that I'm going to be using today. So I'm going to start off with adding some white near the highlighted portion of the shading, and then I'll just add dark colors around it and basically just follow the color pattern that we had when we did the blending. But in this case, we're doing the texture, and this just adds a little bit more of a creative element. So it's like a speckled texture. I also add just a line of white just to I like that just because it's like there's light peeking around the end, and I feel like it adds some interest. It doesn't just kind of like blend into nothing. And then I add yellows and light oranges, or like in the in-between of the dark and the light, and I do some color drawing with the long press to get some more color. That's basically it in terms of the orange. So now we're going to rock a leaf, and I'm going to continue to use the colors from this color palette. We're going to do monoline to draw our leaf, and I'm going to draw it off to the side. I wanted to move my orange out of the way so I didn't have to worry about it. So I still had all the layers selected. We're going to go into a new layer. I'm going to delete my light layer just because now it doesn't really matter. But we have that same principle in our minds while we're drawing the leaf, because we're going to be doing that same thing with the leaf. So I'm going to color drop green into it, and then I know that my stem, I don't want it blended into the other colors. I want it to stay separate, so I do it in a different layer. And then I'm going to add layers on top of my leaf and on top of my stem, so I'll be able to add clipping masks to those. I'm going to pick a light yellow. It doesn't always have to be white and black. I feel like it looks better when you've got some shading colors that are similar to the color that you're working with. So we've got, I tried it with the airbrush. I was like, well, maybe I could skip a step, but I really just don't like how the airbrush looks initially. So we're going to go back to the artistic brush, Larapuna. Hopefully I'm saying that right since I said it so many times. And I just feel like, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but I can, and I like the way it pushes the color around a lot better. And then I'll go back in with the airbrush. I know that seems redundant, but I mean, you can do what you want to do. This is what I found works for me. So I'm going to, once we've finished blending the colors, we will go back to our texture brush that I have. It's like a speckled texture. We're going to use that same light yellow that we used in the blending. I didn't like that it had that big glob, so I redid it. And with the texture on the leaves, I usually go heavy on the edges and then press lighter as I come into the middle part of the leaf. And that's the same with the shading and the highlights. And then I add that little bit of light on the shading side just to add some drama, basically, add some contrast. And then with the stem, I'm just going to add a little bit of orange. I ended up not really loving how this looked, but I wanted to do something to it. So I added some dark and then some light. I think had I gone back and done it again, I would just do the dark on the one side and not worry as much about the highlight, just because I feel like it's a little distracting to the leaf. But that's our orange. Now let's jump into the apple. So the apple, I'm not great at drawing the apple shape. Obviously an orange is like a perfect circle, so that makes it a lot more realistic looking. My apple definitely looks a little bit more cartoony. I'm not so worried about that because I still like how it turned out. So we've got the monoline brush that I'm using for my shape, and I just give it my best effort. It's kind of like, almost like, I don't know, like two odd shapes coming together, but there's creases in between them. I don't know how to explain it, but that's what it looks like. So after that, we're going to add our shading colors after we add our stem, which is in a different layer again, just so it doesn't end up in the blending process. I'm going to add clipping mask to my red, and we're going to go ahead, and apples usually have a little bit more of texture. I was thinking more like a gala apple or something like a Honeycrisp, so it's got like pinks and yellows and browns. It's not just like a Red Delicious where it's like a solid red basically. And I guess I could have picked an easier apple to do. So we're going to start back with Larapuna in the artist section for our blending brush in between the pencil and the eraser. And I'm just going to go ahead and start blending those colors so they kind of blend together. And after this finished, it ended up not having the effect that I hoped it would. So this is definitely something I'm still workshopping. I've practiced the orange a lot. The apple is something I'm still working on. So I wanted to show you guys that it's not, I'm not like a perfect Procreate artist. Hopefully you already know that. So I just finished blending it, and I didn't end up loving how it looked, but it's fine. Then I added my shading colors. So we've got like a light pink, a little bit darker pink. I've got my bright white in the middle. I don't need a whole lot of that. And then I used a little bit of changing the colors to get me my shading. I didn't end up adding any color in between the lights and the darks just because I knew that it would blend together nicely. So I get to blending. It's the same thing. I'm using the Larapuna brush to blend that out. I push the colors basically into each other. In the color you start with, where your pencil is, I feel like that's usually where the strongest color is coming from in terms of the what's the word I'm going for? In terms of the blending. So if you start in red, you'll push red to wherever you're going. And if you started in a lighter color, it would this would make more sense once you've done it. So practice it and the blending will start to make sense. So hopefully this still helps though. I'm just not so great at explaining something sometimes. So we've got our texture brush coming in. I've got a light pink in the highlighted area, adding in some white or cream and adding it along the edges and in the belly of the apple. And then I'll just keep kind of soft blending that shading in terms of the texture. I add a darker color just to, you know, hit home that it is shaded. I added a dark black, or I tried to add black or brown. Black I felt like it was a little too harsh, so I just went a little bit softer with it on the edges. because I felt like it was a little too aggressive. Looked a little weird to have like a super dark black line. And that is it for the shading. And I accidentally alpha locked that one. I meant to do a clipping mask for the stem. And I didn't like the first couple rounds how it looked. So I made this one smaller, and it ended up being a pretty harsh line just because I did make it so much smaller, and then I added some dark on the other side, but I ended up not loving either of these. Just because I feel like it didn't need to look so dramatic. It just needed a soft highlight. So when I zoomed out, I was like, ew, gross. No, I don't like that. So I went back in and I just blended the light color that I brought in, and then I just left it at that. I just did a soft blend. That way you can see that there's just a little bit of a change in color, which I feel like you just need something small in terms of the details, because the apple is the main event and we don't want to distract from it at all. So now we're going to do a leaf, and this time I'm just going to do it right on top of the apple. So I'll go back to my monoline brush in the calligraphy section, draw my leaf, and then I'll color drop into that. And then we will go ahead, and this time I am not going to do any blending in terms of the leaf. We're just going to add the texture, and I'll show how that can get you a really nice effect as well without even doing any of the texture. And I add that line on the leaf, and I end up completely taking it out because it completely gets lost when I start doing the blending, and I wanted it to stand out. So we'll go back to our texture brush. I couldn't find it because I've got so many stinking brush libraries I need to organize. So we're going to go to a light yellow. And once I started, I was like, nope, it's getting on top of that leaf line. I'm not sure what it's called. I'm sure it's got an official title. So I undid it, and I did a clipping mask like I did before. This time I just didn't have the line. And again, you just get a little bit softer as you come to the middle. And I'm still not perfect at it. Obviously, I'm changing it as I go. I ended up adding a really white shading texture, or not shading, highlighting texture on the end. And then I just used a dark green. I didn't feel like the green of the leaf was dark enough to require a black for the shading. So I did a green, and then I added that line back in using a clipping mask so it wouldn't draw over it. So I wouldn't have to worry about like getting it so perfect to the edge. So I used a clipping mask just so I wouldn't have that issue. So anyways, that is the video for today. Thanks for liking, subscribing, commenting your questions. And I try to get back to every question, and I'm trying to make this channel the best I can to help all of you guys. So thanks again for watching, and yeah, I'm just so glad you guys are here, and this has been so fun for me. So thanks, guys.